2019 was an excellent year for filmmaking, but with that said, sometimes films come out every year and they're a little bit disappointing. So in that effort, I thought it would be fun to dive in and talk about my top 10 most disappointing films of 2019. Now, not all these were complete trash. Some of them were actually pretty good or had redeeming abilities to them, but that means it's still time to talk about them. So make sure to comment down below, let me know what your most disappointing films of 2019 were, and of course, also make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you guys are new here, because I do tons of content like this on a daily basis. And of course, film is subjective. If you enjoyed one of these films on this list, awesome. If you didn't, cool, we can relate. But guys, make sure to comment down below, hit that like and subscribe button once again, and of course, let's get started. Coming out on my number 10 is going to be X-Men Dark Phoenix. This is a movie that actually didn't bother me too bad. I went in probably knowing it wasn't going to be the best, but then the trailers came out. I'm like, these trailers actually aren't bad. And then you see the movie, and while it wasn't terrible by any means, I actually thought there were quite a couple of redeeming abilities to this movie. You have all the performances, of course. Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy are killing it, and of course, Sophia Turner is actually excellent in here as Jean Grey herself. Really, the movie just comes down to having a plot that feels quite not the best. And really, the villain in here, we didn't need the aliens in here at all. And it's kind of surprising to just see how dull the movie is as it's progressing throughout its stories. It's just dying. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's breathing any new fresh air into the world. And don't get me wrong, the action sequence with the train was actually good. I was absolutely quite shocked, but it felt like the movie rushed through many of its core elements that it needed to get through. It also had a fantastic score. I do want to mention that Hans Zimmer gave everything to this movie. I mean, the score really enhanced a lot of this movie, and I think without that score, this movie could have tragically gone down even worse. Again, not a terrible movie. Not even the worst X-Men movie. It just is lacking a lot. And, I mean, some of the dialogue is quite bad. The one F word they use in every X-Men movie, the one they used in here was god-awful. But I still enjoyed it. I just walked out going, there was so much more you could have done. Maybe when the MCU reboots this whole thing, and they try Dark Phoenix, I don't think they ever will. But if they do, maybe that'll be third time's the charm, right? Coming up at number 9 is going to be the Lion King reimagining or remake, whatever you want to call it. I was really looking forward to this movie, like really much so. I love Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book. I was just sitting there, I'm like, this guy's an excellent director. He's making Lion King. You got a great format here. Let's get to it. And Lion King comes out, and again, visual effects are top tier visual effects. Some of the best visual effects ever made. It's quite a true accomplishment of what everyone got to do within the VFX team. But the issue with this movie is while The Lion King, it is literally beat for beat the exact same story. I expected that. But it is that this one has no soul or no heart to it. I didn't cry. I didn't weep. I didn't even get tears in my eyes. And that was just personally me. You might feel differently on that. But I didn't feel anything for any single one of these characters. And that is the damn truth. And it sucks in that department because I wanted to feel so much for them, and I couldn't. And a lot of it was because real-life animals cannot express emotions. And I think that's one element that was solely missing from this movie. But it's weird because The Jungle Book still added a lot of that, and I think it was because we had one human protagonist of Mowgli. Lion King doesn't have that. And it really was lacking all those beats. And even the way that they went through the set pieces of the songs were nothing awe-inspiring of the original animated film, where I think you even could have. And I think one of the biggest things is that they were trying to balance between too goofy and too realistic, and they just couldn't find the right balance between it, where I felt The Jungle Book actually felt a nice fine tune between that. Lion King couldn't, and I think they should have gone the more goofy route, because all the goofy elements did work, and Timon and Pumbaa were truly the stars of it. Coming in at my number 8 is a movie that I actually liked, but felt very disappointed in its aspects, because I think there was more to the story that you could have done, and that is the Extremely Wicked movie, which is Ted Bundy. Zac Efron starring as that. Many people were talking about Oscar buzz from him from Sundance, I remember. And then it comes out and I'm like, I don't get any of the buzz about this. Don't get me wrong. It's a competently directed film. I actually interviewed the director. It actually made me like the movie more hearing him talk about it. But one of my biggest issues with the movie itself is it says it's trying to focus more in on the girlfriend, but it's honestly focusing more on the court cases with Ted Bundy himself. And while it's wildly entertaining in those parts, you're missing a lot of elements to it. And I think the coolest thing about the movie is it does play around the, well, did he do it? Did he not? Even though we know he did it, it's still playing around that within your thoughts. And I thought it did a good job in that department. But it really comes down to the same central focus of, okay, well, why is the girlfriend still here? And they didn't focus and double down enough on that. And I thought that would have been the more cool perspective to go through. And even in elements of it, they could have also, I thought everything they did with Ted Bundy was good. It was the girlfriend element that I thought they really messed up on. And there wasn't enough to it, and it made the film overall kind of disappointing, and honestly kind of lacking. So some of you guys may be wondering, Zach, you have different clothes, you're in a different area. Well, while I was editing this, I noticed that I forgot to talk about my number 7 in this list, which is actually Brightburn. Now, I was really looking forward to this one. Love everything that was kind of coming into it. It's going to be like this dark, different version of Superman. Love the trailers, different version of Man of Steel. Guess what? It didn't turn out that way particularly well. It's a good little B/horror film, I guess. But I felt like there was so much more to the concept that you could have easily done and inputted in this film that you didn't. And I think that's where the film actually missed the mark and disappointed me in that aspect. Yes, is it brutal? Fuck yeah, it is. The Jaws scene in the truck? Holy shit. One of the most brutal things I've seen in the last couple of years. And I will go into the department that it was entertaining to watch in that part. But I wanted a lot more from this, and I felt like a lot more could have been put into Brightburn, and I think it was kind of missing in those departments. Again, visually stunning. What they did with the visual effects in here was honestly jaw-dropping. I just thought you could have done more to it and added more intrigue to the story than just this typical slasher horror film that they technically went for. But thank you guys for forgiving me on this flub up of mine. Maybe it won't ever happen again. Coming in at my number 6 is a movie that the more and more I think about, the more and more I'm disappointed about, and that is Velvet Buzzsaw. Dan Gilroy. Are you a one-hit wonder, man? I love Nightcrawler. It's one of the best films of this decade. No spoilers when that decade list comes out, but seriously, one of the best films of the decade. And you make Velvet Buzzsaw, which, again, not horrible, but just not what I wanted. I hear there's a horror film coming from the director of Nightcrawler, and I get this slapstick, goofy horror film, which I get what he was going for, and I think on maybe repeat viewings, which I have not even tried to watch again, I might like it a little bit more because now my expectations are out. I think a lot of this disappointments come from the trailer, though. I watched that trailer. I love that trailer. Then I see the movie. I'm like, okay, yep, the whole movie was in the trailer. Every single beat for beat was in there. And I think that's the one element that did maybe lower my tensions on the movie. Again, I didn't mind Velvet Buzzsaw, but the more I think about it, the more I feel more disappointed with inside of it. I think it's a good made film. I think there are good performances in it. I just wanted it to be a more serious take on this type of dramatic horror that you could have done with this concept, and I just think, again, there wasn't enough done with it. Before we get into my top 5, guys, though, if you guys are new here again, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Also, comment down below and let me know what your guys' thoughts are on my most disappointed list. Are any of ours matching up? Do you have others? Let's discuss it. And of course, you guys, if you guys are new here and you guys want to check out movies early, head over to See Much on Films on how to see films early. And of course, a big thank you to you and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. Now, and of course, with every list I do have some honorable mentions. The biggest one's actually Hobbs and Shaw. Now, I wildly was entertained by that movie, but I still felt a little bit let down by the movie. It wasn't everything that I wanted it to be. And same thing with Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is probably the big one that almost made it. But I just truly thought this is going to be a great reimagining of the Stephen King novel, and it wasn't. It was honestly quite terrible. The more I think about it, the more I dislike it, and I think the elements that they should have focused in more on didn't work. And honestly, the only great elements of that movie was the third act. Everything before that was quite boring. Coming in at my number 5 is going to be Men in Black International. My God, I thought this film was going to be great. It was actually one of my most anticipated summer movies, but it sucked. It was honestly terrible. And I was really disappointed in that. And I think a lot of it goes down to a sole script issue. They knew no idea what they wanted this story to be. It felt like multiple different story ideas were all formulated into one. They just didn't know what to do. You have a great actor within Chris Hemsworth. You have a great actress within Tessa Thompson, and they have wonderful chemistry that we've seen before in Thor Ragnarok, but it did not work inside of this movie whatsoever. Then you also add in the one saving grace of this whole movie, Kumail Nanjiani's Pawnee. Like, Pawnee stole the whole entire movie, and thank God he was in the movie because he brought the biggest laughs. But everything else about this just kind of makes me go back and look and say, I know not all the Men in Black films are great, but damn, this is terrible. I would rather go back and watch all the other ones if I could. And I don't like trashing on movies. Again, there are some fun set pieces in here. There's some good elements in here. The chemistry is still there. It just felt like this movie was trying way too hard, and you could have just pulled back and had a little bit more fun with it and just had a simple story, man. And coming in at my number 4 is going to be Annabelle Comes Home. Now, I was really looking forward to this movie. I mean, absolutely really looking forward to it. I'm a major fan of the Conjuring series. I love the Conjuring. Most of the spin-offs kind of suck. But after Annabelle Creation, which really showed me, yeah, you can do a good Conjuring movie as a spin-off, I said, damn, I'm on board for Comes at Home. And then you kind of get this whole cool concept. It's Nightmare at the Museum, they're describing it. I'm on board for that. But sadly, the movie is not scary at all. There are some good elements to it. Some of the cool demon designs are awesome. It just sucks because, like, all the cool demons I really liked in here, I would rather have just been the Warrens doing it since it was their case files. And I don't know if this is them just testing the waters to see what we want from them. But I'm sorry, but we need a ferryman and the werewolf one right off the bat. They should not have been in this film. I think this film truly was just a cash grab. That's what it felt like. I think there are some sweet moments with the characters inside of here. But when it comes down to a horror film, it's pretty much not even a story. It's really about these girls running from room to room from different demons. That's it. In that aspect, it makes you disappointed to see where it all ends up going. It makes me annoyed and mad the whole time as I'm watching the movie. It's honestly just quite frustrating in all those aspects. And I was just sitting there, I'm like, this should be so much better. Coming in at my number 3 is going to be Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Yes, I know, I'm in the vast minority on this movie. But this movie, I really was disappointed in it. I thought some of the demon designs were cool, always. But I grew up on these books. And I thought just the way that they intersected the stories in here were cool. But at the same time, I didn't care for these characters whatsoever. And I think maybe if I was younger, I would have liked this movie a little bit more. It would have been kind of on edge where it's a little bit scary, but also just enough for me to get through. But it didn't feel that way as a 22-year-old guy watching this movie. I love the books, and the books were messed up, and I didn't expect for this movie to be rated R. I didn't really care if it was. PG-13 horror films can do good, but I didn't think this one did good at all. I thought it was quite lacking in many, many elements of horror. The story was competent, but it was really the characters that quite disappointed me and how they were interacted with and everything. And I just sat there going, man, this movie's long. And it just dragged for me, and I just wanted it to end as it was going on. Again, not a horrible movie by any means, but I was just quite disappointed in its execution of the story and the characters that they decided to put it in. In fact, I think this is a movie that should have just been a Netflix show or a Hulu show and just had these stories played out in live action ways with different characters, and you could have done them for 20 to 30 minutes, and I think it would have worked in that execution just a bit better. Or you could have done something like VHS and done it like that. This one felt like it was a mix of how they did the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black, but it just didn't work. Coming into my number 2 is Hellboy. My God, I was looking forward to this movie so much. Neil Marshall's one of my favorite directors because of The Descent, Game of Thrones, many other things that he's done. You also have David Harbour coming in as the title character as Hellboy. Love the character of Hellboy, like one of my favorite all-time comic book characters of all time. And yeah, this movie was not good at all. I think it bogged down because of the exposition. Again, this is totally a script and story issues. I thought the direction was fine. I thought some of the action sequences were actually really good. And David Harbour as Hellboy was great. I also thought some of the side characters in here were fun to be around, and I had fun in those aspects. But I really had a headache from everything else. Everything I had a headache with really was the story and the exposition, and even some of the trying too hard of the humor. It just really let me down in all those departments, and really everything sold on this movie was everything I wanted it to be from Hellboy. But now I just look back and I'm like, why didn't you just make Del Toro, let him make his third film? No matter even if the budget was more, you probably would have still made or lost less money with that movie than this one. In that department, Hellboy was just a total disaster in all parts. Pretty disappointing because I think David Harbour was a really good Hellboy. Nothing to Ron Perlman, completely two different versions of the character, but still, quite disappointed in that. I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, what's his number 1? My number 1 is the Banana Splits movie. My God, this is also almost my least favorite film of the year, because I'm not doing a worst year of the list. This is kind of my new list I'm doing for that, where most of the films that end up in my worst list are films that more disappointed me. My worst film of the year is Cats, but then the Banana Splits movie, it's like Five Nights at Freddy's. I love the concept of, like, after dark, these things start coming to life and maybe killing people, and it was just totally garbage. It was garbage in execution and everything. I was sitting there just going, what are we doing here? Like, this is such a good idea. And, like, while I will give it that the kills are very gory and actually really fun to go through, the rest of the movie was quite boring and honestly kind of sucked. There was no redeeming characters. All the characters were annoying. The set pieces were quite boring. And I just sat there, and it took me, like, quite a couple of hours to get through it. I'd pause it, do something else. I didn't care to finish it, but I wanted to because I bought the movie on Blu-ray. I already sold it. I don't even want it anymore. But I bought it on Blu-ray. And I just gave up with it multiple times because I'm just like, what is this? You could have made this, like, very cheesy horror film and at least executed it in a right manner, but you didn't. You went for this cheap cash grab of this great Hanna-Barbera property, turned it into a horror film. That is an excellent composition and just in general an excellent premise, and it just didn't work out in the end. Guys, that's gonna be my top 10 most disappointing films of 2019. Let me know again what your guys' thoughts are down below, and make sure to look out for a bunch of different lists coming up this week because, yeah, it's the end of the year, and I got tons of that stuff with you guys. Thank you guys again so much for watching this, and of course, stay classy.